In this lesson, we're going back to, again, solving those special cases where we can solve our equations by square root method, but again, making sure that we now focus on if we can simplify the radicals. So like here, for example, in 1a. Now notice there is no x term. We're just solving for x here, and it's being multiplied by 7. So we just need to go through and do the opposite, right, which is divide by 7. And x squared is equal to 18. Then we take the square root. Now, can we simplify radical 18? Well, let's check, right? Is there a perfect square factor of 18? Yes, 9. Radical 9, radical 2. Because what is the square root of 9? 3. 3 radical 2. So x is equal to plus or minus 3 radical 2. So again, now it's keeping in mind if we can simplify. So like the next one, we're again solving for x. Well, we're subtracting 21. So add 21, right, to both sides. X squared is equal to 28. Now take the square root. So can we simplify? Well, let's check. Is there a perfect square factor of 28? Yes, 4. 4 and 7, because what is the square root of 4? 2. So 2 radical 7. So x is equal to plus or minus 2 radical 7. So then here, 1c. Now we've got our 2-step, right? No x term. So if we're adding 5, do the opposite, right? Subtract 5. Now I've got 3x squared is equal to 96. And so now here, we're going to take that 96, but we can't do square root yet, right? Because it's still being, the x is still being multiplied by 3. So now we need to divide both sides by 3. And x squared is equal to 32. Now take the square root. So let's see if we can simplify radical 32. Is there a perfect square factor? Yes, but start large, right? So don't think 4. So remember, right, go back and create the list if you need to. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2, yes, is 4, which is a factor of 32, but there's something larger. So always start large, right? I'll stop here at 25 because that's too big. But is 16 a factor? Yes. Divide. 32 divided by 16 will give you 2. So now what is radical 16? 4. So 4 radical 2. So that's why here x is equal to plus or minus 4 radical 2. So go ahead and pause the video now and try the 2 u-tries here on your own. And here we go. So again, solving for x here, we're going to add 13 to both sides. I've got 4x squared is equal to 32. So now what do? Divide. Divide both sides by 4. So now I've got x squared is equal to 8. Now what's the last step? Take the square root. So can we simplify radical 8? Yes, because radical 4, which is a perfect square, is a factor. Radical 4 is 2. 2 radical 2. So x is equal to plus or minus 2 radical 2. So then here for 1b, solving for x, but you're adding 8, subtract 8 from both sides. So now here you get 98 is equal to 2x squared. Again, now what do you do to solve for x? Divide by 2, opposite of multiplication. X squared is equal to 49. Now you can take the square root. Now you should have noticed square root of 49. Well, 49 is a perfect square, so you don't have to simplify it because it is a perfect square. So it can be simplified, but not as still another radical. This is plus or minus 7. So now with our next example, again, this is that special case, but we're still solving using square root method. Just notice though, when we have the grouping, we can't add 7 yet, right? Because it's inside of our parentheses. we'll need to take the square root to get rid of our exponent first. Now we can bring down x minus 7. What's inside? Is equal to square root of 81. Can that be simplified? Yes, this is a perfect square, plus or minus 9. So now we're back to where we would set up our two equations, right? Because this is equal to 9 and negative 9. So x minus 7 is equal to 9, and x minus 7 is equal to negative 9 here. So now notice we're going to add 7 here to both sides, and x is equal to 16. That's one of our answers. Again, add 7 to both sides, and x is equal to negative 9 plus 7, which is negative 2. So same thing here for 2b. Again, we can't subtract 5 yet, right? Because it's all grouped together. So we got to take care of that exponent and take the square root. Now, can we simplify radical 24? Yes. So here, but it's not a perfect square, but we can simplify because it does have a perfect square factor of 4. So radical 4 and radical 6. Because now what is the square root of 4? 2. So 2 radical 6. So here we go. We're going to bring down, right? X plus 5 is equal to plus or minus 2 radical 6. Now, this, see how this has a radical here? But when we were to solve for x with this 5, there is no radical 6. So in the end, we're not going to be able to combine. I'm going to subtract 5 here from both sides, and x is equal to, see how we've got negative 5? Bring that negative 5 down. Plus or minus 2, I forgot the 2 here, radical 6. And that is the final answer, because we cannot combine the negative 5 with 2 because they're not like terms. We need to also have a radical 6 here. So now you leave it. That's your final answer. So keep that in mind when we have this situation and you can't combine. So now 2c. Again, we can't actually take the square root yet now because we have this plus 8 here on the outside. So let's get rid of it by doing the opposite. Subtract 8. We're going to subtract 8 from both sides, bring down x minus 3 squared is equal to 4. Now we can take the square root and bring down x minus 3, which is equal to square root of 4. Well, that is a perfect square, plus or minus 2. So we do now need to set up our two equations. X minus 3 is equal to 2, and x minus 3 is equal to negative 2. Now add 3 to both sides. X is equal to 5, so that's one of them. Add 3 to both sides, and x is equal to negative 2 plus 3, which is 1. So 5 and 1 are the solutions. Go ahead and pause the video now and try the 2U tries on your own. And here we go. So you should have noticed here you needed to take the square root first, get rid of the exponent, bring down x minus 6. Now, radical 50 is not a perfect square, but it can be simplified because it has a perfect square factor of 25. 25 times 2, which gives you 5. So plus or minus 5 radical 2. Now, because you still have a radical, you won't be able to simplify and combine. We'll just add 6 here to both sides, and you're left with x is equal to 6, then plus or minus 5 radical 2. That is the final answer, because you can't combine them because of the radical 2. Now here you should have noticed you were needing to add 9 first. So now bring down x plus 2 squared is equal to 36. Now you can take the square root to get rid of your exponent here. Then x plus 2 is equal to square root of 36 is a perfect square, so plus or minus 6. So now we do need to set up our two equations. X plus 2 is equal to 6, and x plus 2 is equal to negative 6. So now when you solve, subtract 2 here, and x is equal to 4 is one of them. Subtract 2 here, and x is equal to negative